Alongside Brent Hubbs and Rob Lewis, I'm Austin Price for the Rocky Top Roundtable, Kentucky Week Edition. Guys, Tennessee looking to get back up on the saddle and ride again after kind of getting knocked off the horse last week against Georgia. How does this offense, especially Jarrett Guarantano, kind of tread water long enough to they can realize they can swim again?
Well, I think the first thing you got to do is you got to run the football. And you may have to be creative in doing that. I'm not sure you can line up and just run it between the tackles and hammer it between the hash marks, so to speak. But Tennessee's got to be able to run the football and get back to Jerry Guarantano not throwing the football 35, 40 times a game. They've got to be more balanced, and so I think Tennessee's commitment to running the football has to be good in this game, and they have to have some early success on the ground.
Rob, when you look at Kentucky, obviously a week ago, defensively, they had 6 interceptions, 4 of which were from KJ Costello. Mississippi State did not score an offensive point in that football game. But Tennessee's been able to move the ball at times, especially through the air last year against Kentucky. Tennessee, to me, has got to be somewhat balanced in this game. To me, they can't just go 100% back towards the run. They've got to find some type of balance, right?
Oh, totally agree, man. And Kentucky is pretty salty in their front seven. I mean, they're not Georgia by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, Georgia may have the best front seven in the country, but Kentucky can bow up and stop the run. So back to Hubbard's point, I think Tennessee needs to be balanced. You don't need to probably throw it 40 times in this football game. And just for long-term purposes, I think Tennessee has to get back to running the football. Looked really decent there the first couple of weeks of the season. They were averaging over 180 yards a game in the first two games, and then went down to Georgia and got -1. So I think you want to be balanced, but I think it's a priority to reestablish the fact that you could run the football against a team that's not Georgia at any rate.
Brent, when you look at Tennessee's passing attack, Josh Palmer's been so good early in this football season. Last week, obviously, had 2 phenomenally caught footballs, contested catches for touchdowns, where he just went up and made a play. But Tennessee needs more than just him. They need somebody to rise up and kind of be that number 2 guy that's consistent. Do you think Tennessee can find somebody to be kind of the Robin to Palmer's Batman?
Well, it might be Eric Gray at this point.
Caught several balls a week ago.
He did, and they threw it to the running backs, I think, 10 times in the Georgia game, and I think you'll see them throw the ball to the backs again this week. But to your point, yeah, they need another guy to step up. Where are those freshmen, those much ballyhooed freshmen that were talked about? Do they get 4 or 5 plays in this week for Holiday to run, or Jimmy Callaway, or Jalen Hyatt, Malachi Wideman? I mean, I think the thing that stood out, they do not have a physically imposing guy who maybe lacks foot speed, but is a guy who can shove defenders around. They don't have that on the roster, Rob. So when you don't have that, you better go with the speed factor. And I think Tennessee's got to get more speed on the field at wide receiver.
Yeah, they don't have a Jawan Jennings type who's going to bully a 6 foot, 185-pound cornerback. They don't. And outside of Josh Palmer, really pedestrian at wideout through the first couple games. I mean, Brandon Johnson's made a couple plays, but nobody except for Palmer could get any separation, could get any kind of could get off the line of scrimmage against physical press coverage last week. I kind of thought that Ramel Keaton would have a chance to do that, but I'm with you. We heard so much about the freshmen in August, and those guys missed a lot of time. They were behind the 8 ball because of contact tracing and missed practice time. But from after what we saw against Georgia, with it being Palmer and virtually nobody else who could get anything done, I think you've got to give those freshmen a chance.
In previewing Tennessee's matchup with Kentucky's offense, Tennessee's defense, I thought, given the fact they were on the field more than 2-1 than their counterparts from Georgia a week ago, given the fact that they were given shortened fields, multiple times, and Tennessee's defense or offense gave up a defensive touchdown by Georgia, I thought the defense held their own, played pretty good. And, they play a Kentucky team this week that, is one-dimensional in a lot of ways, but what they do well, they do it extremely well.
Well, and I think the challenge for Tennessee is to play on the perimeter, okay? They've got to be able to handle the zone reads. They've got to be able to handle stuff on the perimeter. The Kentucky wants to spread you out and try to gas you a little bit up the middle and then hit the zone read stuff on the edge. So I think Tennessee's eye discipline off the edge is going to be really important. That's something they've got to deal with. And then they've got to stop the stuff in the middle of the field. I'm with you, Austin. I thought Tennessee defensively, particularly for about a quarter quarter and a half of that football game in Athens, Georgia was really good. I thought they had a great beat on what Todd Monken and that Georgia offense was doing. They've got to clean up a little bit of third down stuff. They probably need to tackle a little bit better than they did at times at Georgia. But I don't have a problem with where this Tennessee defense is, provided they can tighten up a little bit between the hash marks on passing downs.
Jeremy Pruitt, expressed some displeasure with Tennessee's star position. That's something you talked about in our stock report this week, Brent, which came out yesterday. To me, this is the perfect game for kind of just tinkering with the star, because Kentucky doesn't throw it a whole lot. So to me, when you do play somebody in that star position, maybe you do give one of those younger kids a look and say, let's see if we can grow up a little bit right here.
Well, I think they just have to find an answer there and get settled, Rob. I think when you look at them, in Kentucky, if you're playing Tennessee and you watch them on tape, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, our slot guy's going to run slants. Okay, and he's going to run slants till you stop him. And then we're going to try to hit the tight end across the middle of the field till you stop that. So they've got to clean that up, whether that's a personnel change, whether that's a schematic change, whatever it is. They've got to tighten up the middle of the field, not just for this game against Kentucky, but for going forward. Because right now, I think that's the way everybody's going to attack Tennessee until Tennessee shows they can stop the inside stuff.
We had the numbers this week on the board. I think Georgia threw for 238 yards. 150 of that came in the middle of the field, and a lot of it down the field, 10 yards or more. And I think we all kind of assumed that would get better with Sean Schamberger back, but that was not the case. I mean, was he just rusty? He's been practicing. It's not like he's been hurt and just on the sidelines. I have to think, with as much football as he's played and as well as he played last year, I got to think that it was a little bit case of rust. But I'm with Austin also. If it's not, you give him a shot, but you also, maybe Danico Slaughter gets another look in there after a rough start at South Carolina. But without question, it's going to be fixed. And it's not all the star position. I think Tennessee's linebackers on the inside have struggled in coverage as well. But that defensively, when you look at it, that has been just a glaring shortcoming for this defense.
Austin, let me ask you this. Would it be a possibility? Do you think it's something they would consider? Slide Bryce Thompson inside at star and play Kenneth George outside at corner, because you feel like that's your 5 best defensive backs, as opposed to maybe going with a Theo Jackson at star who's still learning the position, or Danico Slaughter who's a freshman there? I
think a lot of it depends on their confidence in Alante. Alante did not play real well last week. And was so-so in game 2 against Missouri after having, I thought, one of his best games in orange against South Carolina. So I guess a lot of it to me depends on, where your confidence level is, and number 2, on the defensive side, not the offensive side. But, I'm interested to see, too, this week, how much does Kentucky play both quarterbacks? Is Terry Wilson going to get a lion's share of the work, or is it going to be more of a rotation with him still getting a little bit more than Gatewood? They played Gatewood some last week. I think that bears watching, because anytime you're switching quarterbacks around, it can give a defense problems, because 2 guys can do 2 different things, although those guys are similar.
Well, you saw that in the Missouri game. Tennessee was ready for the starter, and then Missouri found a quarterback midway through the second quarter that went on to beat LSU last week. So you never know. Rob, there's a lot of work to get Gatewood eligible. I'm kind of surprised Kentucky hasn't played him more, because of how much there was, the work was done to get him immediately eligible, and then he's not really been a factor. When Cade Mays got immediately eligible, he went straight to the starting lineup. I'm surprised that we haven't seen more of Gatewood. I'm not sure what exactly Eddie Gran's looking for in that offense. I'm not there to see Gatewood practicing, but you would think that they would start to work him in much more than they have to this point.
Yeah, but like AP said, I don't think it's a huge adjustment for Tennessee, because both those guys, those guys are pretty similar. Gatewood maybe throws it a little better, but I think it's largely still the same Kentucky offense.
All right, that's Tennessee and Kentucky coming up Saturday at noon. For Rob Lewis and Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price.